They say the forests of Oregon hold more than just deer and pine. I never believed that sort of thing. Ghost stories, legends, whispers in the dark. I was always the rational type, the one who chalked up weird sounds to animals or wind, not something supernatural. That changed last fall, during what was supposed to be a solo weekend hike to clear my head. I had just finished a tough project at work and wanted some peace. No phone, no emails, no traffic, just me and the woods. I parked at the trailhead near Mount Hood, checked my pack, and started down the mossy trail just as the sun broke through the canopy above. The forest was stunning, lush, green, and quiet except for birdsong and the rustling of squirrels. I felt calm, at ease. But even then, there was something. A stillness beneath the quiet. An old wooden sign, almost swallowed by vines, caught my attention. It didn't say much, just the name of the trail, Whispering Pines. Something about the name lingered in my mind, but I shook it off. I mean, it sounded poetic, didn't it? Like something from a novel. I had no idea what was waiting deeper in those woods. A few hours into my hike, I noticed the birds had stopped singing. The air felt thicker somehow, heavier. I paused, listening. There was no sound, no wind, no insects, just silence. It was unsettling, but I told myself it was just part of being deep in the wilderness. Then came the whispers. At first I thought it was the wind, the way it moved through the trees. It almost sounded like voices, distant and unintelligible. But as I kept walking, they became more distinct, like hushed conversations happening just out of sight. I would stop and look around, but there was never anyone there. I laughed it off, told myself I was being paranoid. Still, I picked up the pace. I reached a clearing and sat down to rest, taking a long drink of water. That's when I noticed the trees. The one directly in front of me had long, deep gouges carved into its bark. Claw marks. I examined them closely. They were fresh, too fresh, and way too deep for any normal animal. Then I heard it, a whisper, clear this time. It said my name. I jumped to my feet and spun around, but no one was there. My heart was pounding. I told myself someone was messing with me, maybe another hiker playing a cruel joke. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I turned back toward the trail, intending to head back the way I came, but the path was wrong, twisted. It didn't look the same. Panic began to set in. I used my GPS, but the signal was weak and glitching. I decided to retrace my steps manually, marking the trees as I walked. That's when I found an old campsite, half buried in leaves. The tent was shredded, like it had been clawed open. A rusted camping stove sat in the ashes of an old fire pit. And there, under a rock, was a faded photograph. It was of a young couple, smiling at the very clearing I had just passed through. On the back, in barely legible ink, were the words, "Don't listen to the voices." I spent that night in a makeshift shelter, unable to sleep. The whispers didn't stop. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they said my name, over and over. By morning, I was determined to figure out what was going on. I hiked back to the town near the trailhead. At a small diner, I asked the locals about Whispering Pines. Most just shook their heads. But one old man leaned over and whispered, "That trail should have been sealed off years ago. Folks go missing up there." He told me about a legend, a spirit that lured hikers into the forest, using their names, their memories, their fears. It fed on confusion, isolation, fear. Despite the warnings, I went back. I had to know, had to see for myself. I thought I could beat it, expose whatever was hiding out there. I carried a camera, audio recorder, and GPS this time. I hiked fast, determined to get deeper than before. About 6 miles in, the whispers returned. This time louder, clearer. They weren't just saying my name. They were repeating things I had never told anyone. Private thoughts, things from my childhood, regrets, secrets. Then I saw her, a figure standing in the mist ahead, pale, still, wearing clothes that looked decades old. Her hair was long and tangled, her eyes empty. I froze. She raised a hand, pointing to the tree beside me. I turned. There were claw marks again. But this time, beneath them, carved into the bark, was my name. I stumbled back. The air turned freezing. My breath came out in clouds. The trees groaned and the ground trembled. Shadows twisted around me. I ran. Branches clawed at my face. The forest seemed endless, shifting. Every step felt like it led me deeper in, not out. Then I saw it. My car, just beyond the trees. I sprinted, not looking back. Not until I slammed the door shut and locked it. I exhaled, safe, until I looked at the passenger window. My name, scratched into the glass, from the inside. I never told anyone. Who would believe me? But I couldn't let it go. I returned home, trying to convince myself it was stress, lack of sleep, but I started noticing things. Whispers in my apartment, shadows in the corner of my eyes. I researched every name connected to Whispering Pines. Most were missing person reports. A few were survivors, but they had all changed. Paranoid, reclusive. One even ended up in a psychiatric ward. Then I found a journal online from a man who hiked Whispering Pines in the 80s. He described the same things: voices, claw marks, names in the trees. His last entry, "It follows you home." I returned to the trail one final time, against my better judgment. I found that old campsite again. This time the tent was gone. But carved into a nearby tree was a list of names. My name, the man from the journal, the couple from the photograph, dozens of others. It's a pattern. The entity doesn't kill you in the forest. It brings a piece of itself back with you, a seed planted in your mind. It grows with fear, with silence, with time. And the worst part? I haven't slept in days. Every time I close my eyes, I see her, closer and closer. So, if you ever find yourself hiking near Mount Hood and you see a sign that says Whispering Pines, turn around. Don't listen to the voices. And for God's sake, don't answer when they call your name. In 2018, I was a 32-year-old software developer living in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Life had been chaotic for months. Tight deadlines, constant notifications, and a creeping burnout I couldn't shake. I needed to disconnect, so I packed my camping gear, left my phone on airplane mode, and drove north to the Huron-Manistee National Forest. The drive alone began to ease my tension. As I passed quiet towns and entered the dense woods, the silence felt like a warm blanket. I set up camp near a trickling creek, surrounded by towering pines and the smell of fresh earth. The setting sun filtered through the branches, casting a golden hue that made everything seem serene. As I gathered firewood just before nightfall, I stumbled upon something odd: a half-burnt photograph buried beneath a pile of leaves and moss. It was old, maybe from the 60s, showing a family in front of a vintage station wagon. Their faces were faded, but the image felt oddly familiar, like a forgotten memory teasing the edge of my mind. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe a hiker dropped it years ago. I placed it on a nearby log, not knowing that would be the first sign something wasn't right. That night the forest felt different. The usual sounds of crickets and owls were absent, replaced by an unsettling stillness. Around midnight, as I sat by the fire watching embers float into the darkness, I noticed something. A faint golden glow swaying between the trees. At first I thought it was another camper with a lantern, but as I listened, I realized there were no footsteps, no rustling leaves, just the steady, rhythmic sway of the light. I stood up and called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" The lantern froze mid-motion. Then, without a sound, it vanished. I spent the next hour in silence, flashlight in hand, scanning the forest. Nothing. No movement. No sounds. Just an overwhelming sense that I was being watched. When I finally lay down to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling. The next morning, I found something that sent chills through me. Nailed to a tree about 15 feet from my tent was a photograph. Not just any photo. It was me. as a child. Sitting on a park bench I remembered from my hometown. I was maybe 6 or 7. Same striped shirt, same crooked smile. I had never seen that picture before in my life. After that discovery, my peaceful getaway turned into an obsession. I needed to understand what I had seen, what had seen me. I drove to the nearest town, Luzerne, and visited the small local library. Most of the books were outdated, but one binder in the local history section caught my eye. Inside were newspaper clippings from the 1960s. One article described the disappearance of a forest ranger named Eli Whitmore and his family. They had lived in a ranger's cabin deep in the Huron forest and vanished without a trace in November 1965. Witnesses said they often saw Eli carrying an old kerosene lantern during his nightly patrols. Legend said if you saw the lantern man, you should leave the forest immediately, or risk becoming part of it. Supposedly, the spirit was searching for something or someone, and left behind relics from his own past to lure in the living. I returned to my camp that evening with my head full of questions. I set up a camera trap aimed toward the woods and stayed up most of the night by the fire. Just after 1 a.m., the camera triggered. The lantern appeared again. But this time, I saw a silhouette behind it. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like an old ranger's uniform. I raised my phone to snap a picture, but the screen went black. All of my gear failed at once. Then, just inches behind my ear, I heard a whisper, "You're not supposed to be here." I packed up and left at dawn. Back home, I immediately checked the SD card from the camera trap. Every file was corrupted, except one, a single image of my campsite, with a blurred figure holding a lantern, standing just at the edge of the trees. I showed the image to my mother. Her face turned pale. She went to a box of old family photos and pulled one out. It was a black and white portrait of my grandfather, Eli Whitmore, the same name from the article. I stared in disbelief. The man in the photo wore the same ranger uniform. My mother explained that he had gone missing before she was even born. No one ever talked about it. Suddenly, everything clicked. The photo of me as a child, the whisper in the woods, the broken electronics. It wasn't just a random haunting. This thing, it knew who I was. I went back one final time. During the day, I found the moss-covered rock again, but my old campsite was gone. No fire pit, no flattened grass, like I had never been there. In the same place where I found the childhood photo, there was now another. This time it showed me standing at my tent 2 nights ago. My posture, my clothes, even the forest behind me. It was a perfect snapshot. But I didn't take it. The feeling of being watched returned instantly. I left, heart pounding, and drove without stopping until I got home. That night, while scrolling through my phone, the same childhood photo appeared in my gallery. Only now, the background was different. The lantern man was closer. Much closer. I don't camp anymore. I don't go near forests. But sometimes when the lights are out and the house is still, I catch a glimpse of a flickering light outside my window. And occasionally, my phone will buzz with a new notification. An image I didn't take. Always of me. Always with a faint glow behind me. I don't know what the lantern man wants. Maybe he's trying to return. Maybe he's trying to bring me back. But if you ever find yourself in the Huron forest and see a light swaying in the trees, don't follow it. Some spirits don't want to be forgotten. Some of them remember you.